So this section is going to be a bit more ranty than normal. Maybe. We'll see. I'm 2 drinks in and a little bit miffed at Konami because of last week's ban list. Now, at the time of recording the video that I did evaluating the ban list after, a few days after it had been dropped, I said the ban list was fine. It was what they could do without hitting cards that had been released at the start of the COVID crisis to now, while still trying to address the meta as it was. That's why they can't ban Needle Fiber, but they can ban Jet Synchron and O-Lion. They can't ban anything in Adamancipator, but they can ban Block Dragon, because that's been out forever. Things of that nature. Now, I'm going to go to in-game with Border here, and I'm going to take a shot at Konami here for 2 cards that they decided to put to 1. One was it came off from the ban list and went to 1, and that's Harpie's Feather Duster. Now, a lot of people got excited for this card, and I understand. I get it. This card has been banned for, I think, 16 years. Really fucking long time, for a reason. And a lot of people said it probably won't change the meta at all. You just Fiendus negate it, or you judgment it and not care. And I get that reasoning. However, this is the issue that I've got with Harpie's Feather Duster more than anything else. It restricts side deck building even further than it already was. Let me explain. Before Harpie's Feather Duster came off the ban list, 2 weeks ago, let's go there. If you wanted to put back row removal in your main or side deck, you had plenty of options to pick from. You just had to go and try and find one that made sense depending on what you were playing. Maybe your deck had a lot of discard effects or didn't mind losing some resources from hand, so you put in Twin Twisters. Maybe you really did not like the fact that one person in your format in your locals is playing Mystic Mine with Field Barrier, so you played Cosmic Cyclone. Maybe you're going first, so you decide to play Heavy Storm Dusters because it's a trap card that pops 2, but you lose your battle phase. It's a trap card you play during your opponent's turn. Who damn cares? Maybe you want to play a hand trap-like card and you play Typhoon. Maybe you just want to play MST because you're playing Old School Sky Striker. There were choices that you would have to make, and then you would pick accordingly. If you really want something that would be board wipey, at least in that one you would play something like Evenly Matched. You lost your battle phase, it could be negated, but if it went through, they got to keep 1 card, and at least in that point it was fair. Your opponent played into the Evenly Matched. It's their own fault for being evenly matched for 8. They probably still beat you anyway because it's the year 2020. The issue that I have a problem with when it comes to Harpie's Feather Duster over anything else is twofold. 1, we just bloody well got Lightning Storm, FFS, which is basically Harpie's Feather Duster, but somewhat fair. It's a card you can play 3 of, but you can't play it if you control any face-up cards. This basically means that past that turn 2, because you're playing this going second, your turn 1, if you have a face-up card in the field, you can't play this card. You can't play Harpie's Feather Duster. And let's get one thing straight. You're 95% of the time playing this card, activating the second effect to destroy all of your opponent's spells and traps. Okay? Let's be honest. Let's be real with ourselves. We already had a card that is doing what Harpie's Feather Duster is going to do, albeit somewhat fair. Now they unlock Harpie's Feather Duster to 1. What does that do when it comes to side decking? You only need 2 Lightning Storms now. You're playing a Harpie's Feather Duster as your 3rd copy. Think you're putting in Twin Twisters? Put in 2. Put in Feather Duster. Think you're putting in Cosmic Cyclones? Put in Feather Duster. Because it outs the bloody Field Barrier anyway, and Mystic Mind will die in the end phase because it's 90% of the reason you're playing Cosmic Cyclone. Think you're playing Typhoon? Forget about it. Just play Feather Duster. The side deck now is being railroaded when it comes to back row removal. Your immediate option straight up, if you have it, is to grab Feather Duster and put that in the first slot, and then put in 2 other cards that happen to do back row removal maybe a couple copies of Lightning Storm. If people have been paying attention on the markets at the moment, it's why Lightning Storm kind of dropped a little bit in price, because everyone rushed to go get their Feather Dusters and maybe sold their third copy of Lightning Storm, or just the market for buying a playset kind of dropped because now you're buying 2 Lightning Storm and 1 Feather Duster, because as I said, 95% of the time when you activate Lightning Storm, you're using the Feather Duster effect. So I don't like the fact that Feather Duster has come back to 1 for that reason. Now, if you want to play a Feather Duster and 3 Lightning Storms, by all means, do your thing. But you're going to put Feather Duster into your side deck. Or if you want to, you're going to put it into your main deck. Because unlike Lightning Storm, if you see this on turn 4, 5, 6 against an Altergeist player who just set 4 pass and you top deck Harpie Feather Duster, you're going to be smiling ear to ear. And that Altergeist player, as well as everyone around you, is going to understand why this thing was banned for 16 years. Now, that isn't as annoying as Cold by the Grave going to 1. Before I continue, number was not available. I'm going to call you Avail. Thank you for the follow, sir. Let's talk Cold by the Grave and why I think it was a really bad idea that this card went to 1. A lot of the most relevant hand traps in the game right now, about 60% of them, I would say, Cold by the Grave can't hit. Infinite Impermanence, Nibiru, Psyframe, Gear Gamma. Just to name 3 at the moment, you cannot Cold by the Grave this card at all. A lot of top tier decks weren't even main decking, weren't even side decking Cold by the Grave. Because a lot of the hand traps that would beat them, Cold by the Grave can't hit. So that is to just take those 3 cards out and replace them with 3 cards that we could maybe actually use. And if they ate an Ash Blossom, they ate it, took it on the chin and moved on, or played through it like Adamancipator used to do pre-format when they still had Block Dragon. And a lot of other decks, to be fair. Why do I think this is a bad idea if it doesn't harm the top tier decks? Well, what decks are left? Your tier 2 rogue decks. Cold by the Grave, 90% of the time, is used on the defensive to stop a hand trap from stopping you from playing. Now, I can understand why that seems really strong in the meta for the top tier decks. The top tier decks weren't using Cold by the Grave because they could play through 4 hand traps and not give a fuck. Drops Block Dragon, not anymore obviously. But they could just continue playing. They didn't care. And then you had 2 cards in your hand. The card you had left and your draw for turn. And if one of those isn't a starter, you pass and get 1 shot. They literally didn't care. But rogue decks getting ashed, Burning Abyss Tour Guide, for instance. You get ashed on Tour Guide, you pass your turn. Cold by the Grave might be the only reason, the only card that can see you through a turn to actually put something on the board. Guru Control has this problem. Altergeist somewhat has this problem. There are a lot of decks in the bottom end. Even Dinos have this problem. Hit Overraptor, see what happens. If they had Cold by the Grave, they keep playing. If they don't have Cold by the Grave, they set 1 pass. It hits Rogue. And I don't like that. You shouldn't be aiming at Rogue decks for hits like this. But there's a second reason to why Cold by the Grave got hit. And the comments for Fafa or even Triff even mentioned on this one, and Simo pretty much all basically covered this. It's because of this bastard. Pure greed. Cross-Act Designator is Cold by the Grave, but better in some respect. You could also put 3 Tactics Talent here if you really wanted to, but it's basically this card. Now, for those that don't know, Cross-Act Designator. I think they don't even know what the TCG naming is going to be. Declare 1 card name, banish 1 card with that name from your deck, and if you do, until the end of this turn, its effects are negated, as well as the activated effects and effects on the field of cards with the same original name. So, Hidden City, effect, Ash, Cross-Act Designator, call Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, taking Ash from your deck and throwing it to the graveyard, negate. It's effectively Cold by the Grave, you just have to play the cards in your deck as well. This is your replacement for Cold by the Grave, and we don't have it yet. I would not be surprised if this comes out in Phantom Rage, because it is the replacement for Cold by the Grave, albeit a little bit worse in some respect, and albeit a little bit better in other respects. So keep that somewhat in mind, in that you're going to have to deal with that issue of buying Cross-Act Designator in order to make up for your Cold by the Graves. Strictly capitalist, strictly greed, the only thing I can go with for why Cold by the Grave went to 1. I mean, for crying out loud, late last year, Cold by the Grave went to 2, public outcry blew the fucking roof off, and it went back to 3 in the next ban list. The only reason they could put this to 1 is pure greed, because they're releasing a replacement. It's the only thing I can come up with. I am a stern opponent of ban lists hitting cards strictly because corporate greed. I know it's something I can't avoid. It's going to happen. It's why we have pseudo set rotation by banning decks out of existence so people have to buy a different product. It's why Konami didn't really like the idea of Sky Striker being the best deck for a year and a half and then nuked it from orbit to force people to buy other decks. Same thing goes for Thunder Dragon and somewhat a few other decks in the midst. It happens to every deck. Spiral, for instance. They didn't like the fact that Spiral became top tier with Magician's Souls, so they banned Spiral even further. It's what happens. But hitting these utility cards, I'm not a big fan of. They're utility for a reason. Without Cold by the Grave, rogue decks get hit really hard. They have to be forced to play Crossout Designator and fork out the, I'm going to put it out there, 350 Australian to buy a playset. Not a fan. And it shouldn't be done. Period. Really speaking, Crossout Designator and Cold by the Grave have a bit of overlap in what they do, but at the same time, the utility off to the edges, they can do something different. Cold by the Grave playing offensively can only be used to hit cards that go to the opponent's graveyard. Crossout Designator, on the other hand, is really good in mirror matches, don't get me started, and just putting cards in the main to act as designated targets against matchups that you don't particularly like or are fond of. So there's utility off to the edges. You might play one or the other or both. Now we don't have a choice. We just have to get designators when it comes out. Not a fan of that. Konami, cut it out, please. Please put Cold by the Grave back to at least 2, if not 3. You've hit it for all the wrong reasons. Not a fan.